the processes that you need in a venture studio. And we've talked about the crew or the capabilities, and the processes, or as we like to call it, the rocket, is being manned by that crew, right? So everybody has their battle stations, everybody knows what they need to do. But they also follow a process, right? You don't want your rocket crew to go rogue. And again, we have 5 processes here that we look deeply into. I'll start with the first one, and then I'll throw it over to you, Torbjörn. But that is really about your operations, finance, hiring. It's the whole back-end stack for your venture studio. And the reason why we emphasize this is we're trying to do something quite complex. We're trying to build multiple businesses that will go on and become huge in their own rights. There are many moving parts, and really need to make sure that we're not swamped with tedious tasks to be done in our team. And especially when we have these experts in our crew, we want them to play to their strengths and not be locked or held back by operations. So that's one of the first things we look to get right: having the right tool stack, having the right databases, processes for stuff like finance and hiring that set us up to actually build multiple businesses. And then the next 4 are very intertwined. So that is the venture building process. That's everything from coming up with the right ideas, turning them into products, getting them into the market and charging money for your products. And then when you succeed, scaling them from there. So Thor, it would be great if you can take us through these underlying processes and how we've structured them.
Yeah, thank you. So yes, as you said, like we have the crew, right? And it's great to have the crew because those are the people who man the rocket. But if they don't know what to do within the rocket, but they kind of just have the natural abilities to or the potential to do the right things, it's still a problem, right? And that is why companies that really succeed, they tend to have different sort of frameworks and processes and systems and things like that they then can operate in, because that just amplifies the sort of potential of each individual superstar, you could say. And then if you look at that from a very kind of venture studio specific angle, there are 3 or 4 buckets that we have identified, which are the ideation, first of all, which is like, as a venture studio, you're not only running with one idea, building one company, you're building multiple companies. It's part of your superpower to be able to do this. That means that you need an ideation and research framework where you come up with a lot of ideas, you establish an idea bank, you know how to kind of sequence it, and you know which filters it had to go through, and you know how to kind of use your domain expertise to say, this is the ICP we're working within, these are the things that normally fails within this domain, and generally so that you get high quality ideas as well, and also so that you know which of the idea do we select in the end, and have a strong framework for that, so that you are ensure that you are running with a high potential idea, but also one that is not so insanely big that it doesn't make sense with whatever stage you are at, right? That when you then chosen your idea, the next point, kind of bucket that we identified, is the product development process. So one thing is that you have you have product and tech sort of excellence within your team, but again, you need to kind of think about how can we take this idea and validate it as fast as possible, because there is this resource question always with a startup, right? Where it's like, we have limited resources, we have limited time, and we need to kind of select what parameters should we go for. And I think for many startups, it used to be the MVP, the minimum viable product. It was a very popular sort of concept to work through. But as sort of, I think that our capabilities as a startup ecosystem and with technology, AI, playbooks, frameworks has kind of increased, we believe now that this SLC model, the simple, lovable, and complete, it's like you take a slice of everything instead of only the bottom part, so that you have a more finalized brand, you have a more kind of at least one feature that is really strong. So it's a little bit looks more like a final product. That is what you need to get to. And in the product development process, you probably have a very clear kind of you have some gates that you need to go through in order to kind of validate what are we building, when is our ISP happy with whatever it is we are selling, and just how do we build it, because it can be
Yeah, so if I could just stop you there and double click, what could be a validation gate that you need to get through? So we had some idea, we selected it, we're building on it, but we're quite aware that we might also fail and want to go back and select another idea. So what would be an example of a gate that a metric or some kind of outcome that we need to deliver in our product development process before we're confident in moving ahead?
Yeah, there could be different milestones. From the product perspective, you will do a lot of experimentation and you create like the ICP, the business model, the customer journey. You do a lot of workshop and do a lot of work, right? But then the actual kind of targets that brings us a little bit to the next box, which is the GTM, the go-to-market and the revenue generation box, where it's like again, you have a head of GTM, you have a commercially minded co-founder of the studio founder, if you will, but you still need to kind of figure out how what are these targets that you're talking about? Like, is it revenue? Is it user targets? Is it LOIs? Is it people actually? Or usually it comes down to something at the likes that without spending too many resources in the build, you need people to kind of swing the card, right? To show that they have a high intent on actually being in the first kind of cohort of this, because if you can get 10 customers with a not optimized product at all, you could probably get 1,000 with an optimized product, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe on a higher level on this GTM and revenue generation block, it's very important to understand that the person who is working with the commercial, instead of just having to spend 18 months figuring out what how should we do this? How should we approach this? Then he already comes in with the sort of the plan where it's like, is it a B2B product? Is it a B2C product? How do we work with top of funnel, mid of funnel, conversion rate? How do we go through everything, right? So that it becomes a much more kind of robust and you hit the ground running, you could say, right? So that's very much the point of this of getting that kind of point under control.
Mm-hmm.
Then the last thing we have, which is kind of segues a little bit out from there, because then you get into scaling when you actually succeed. So let's say you do actually validate, you do hit your targets, everything is going as well as you wanted. You want to now kind of proceed, and the way that we see that is that we love to at least with all of this process to also kind of write down this sort of founding document where everybody that comes on board can now understand and see what happened, why did something happen, what is the ICP, what is not the ICP, which theses were not correct and which were correct, and all these sort of things are just things that if you want to scale any product idea, then it becomes much easier for no matter where you work in the upcoming organization to understand. But then you also just need to figure out what are we even how will we get major success with this, right? Does it require a lot of capital? Do we just get a small amount of one and done sort of funding from our studio itself? Is it an operator model? Is it do we spin out with some of the people who were in the process that where we kind of validated the product? You just need this kind of strong ship-off process to kind of understand where you're going here, right?